So what brings you to Grand Farm?
Well, at the invitation of RDO, we're here to talk about technology in agriculture.
And what do you think of this facility, first of all?
This is awesome. I think this is a little glimpse of what the future looks like, actually. I'm super impressed with the facility. The fact that technology in agriculture can support something like this existing where people get together and have this conversation that we're going to have today, I think it's amazing.
What do you think of some of the people you've been in the room with that have been the innovators here going back to, I said on the radio today, we really, literally, in this part of the world, replaced the wheelbarrow because of the skid steer loader and Bobcat, and that innovation has continued with the Steiger being born here and everything else. Is this the Silicon Valley of agriculture?
Yeah, I mean, from a Deere perspective, the answer is yes. Like we have a couple facilities here in Fargo. Little known fact, those facilities and the people in them are wildly talented, first of all, and they develop a lot of the electronics and the software that goes into the equipment that we produce.
Talk a little bit about RDO and what kind of a partner they are in the John Deere world.
Yeah, RDO is a great partner. They're a great dealer in the John Deere dealer network for sure. And it's events like this where you sort of get to be exposed to the broader RDO network and get to understand how connected they are to their customers and how important those customers are to them.
Speaking of customers, what kind of things are on the drawing board as the Chief Technology Officer at John Deere? How are you super serving your customers with technology?
We just had an opportunity today to talk to a handful of customers about autonomy, and sort of they're going to get an opportunity this year to experience autonomy on their farms. I think we're in, inning number one, maybe at bat number one, if you want to think about it that way, relative to autonomy, and there's a lot of real good opportunities coming up in front of us.
Explain what that means from the perspective of the city kids are listening. Yeah. What would an autonomous tractor mean?
Yeah, I think today you have to recognize that a farmer might spend 12, 14, 16 hours a day in a piece of equipment doing farm work, right? In the spring and planting, and in the fall and harvest in the northern hemisphere. And those are exhausting, grueling days. And farmers, the average age of a farmer in North America is 58 years old. So that's a incredible amount to ask of a farmer to be able to do that. And autonomy is really just a tool in the toolbox. The way I think about it is a tool in the toolbox of a farmer to be able to use if they want to get out of the machine and no longer have to be coupled to the machine. They can go do something else with the hours they would have spent in that machine. Maybe it's something productive on the farm, additional work that they need to get done on the farm. Maybe it's going and having a hot meal with their family. Maybe it's going and seeing a child or a grandchild's sporting event in the high school. Who knows? But it's I think the biggest constraint on the farm is time, and autonomy is an opportunity to give some of that time back to a farmer.
And it's also labor, isn't it? I mean, obviously the workforce for every sector is a challenge these days. What would it do for the workforce load, or lightening the workforce load in agriculture?
Yeah, there's no doubt there's movement from rural environments to urban environments in every state. If you just look at the census information, it'll tell you that. And so, to your point, this ability to attract labor to the farms is becoming more and more difficult as time goes on. And I think the reality is higher levels of automation in the equipment and eventually autonomy in the equipment helps us to solve and address that issue.
Talk about your spraying technology that you've talked a little bit about today and how that's changing.
Yeah, so we're talking about See & Spray today. See & Spray is super cool. It's the ability for a sprayer as it goes through the field. Normally it would apply the same product, whether that's a nutrient or whether it's a herbicide or a pesticide or whatever it might be, to the whole field all at the same time in the same way at the same rate. See & Spray is the ability for us when we're looking at just herbicides to spray just the weed. So it significantly reduces the overall application of herbicide in the field, by 60, 70% potentially, depending upon the field, and be able to reduce how much of that product actually goes on the field. So it's a win for the farmer. It's less cost in the herbicide cost that they would have every year. It's a win from an environmental perspective. Nobody wants to put more herbicide on a field than they need to, and it's I think a win overall for us because it's an opportunity for that farmer to do more with less.
Given corn prices right now, obviously anything...
They bounced back a little bit.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, this tariff thing has been interesting to watch right now, the upward pressure on it. But what you're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, not only would reduce obviously the input cost from the standpoint of the amount of those products you're buying, but it might do a little something on the supply and demand side and bring down, those costs of those products overall. Am I right?
Yeah, I think it has the potential to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Talk a little bit about, from the perspective of John Deere right now and these technologies, what is that doing overall for your total sales, right? I mean, obviously the downward price pressure has put some challenges into your sector. Yep. Does this reverse that? What is the ultimate goal here from the overall financial standing of John Deere?
There's no doubt we're in the midst of a trough from an ag industry perspective, and there's some green shoots of hopes that we're starting to come out of that, I think, over time. And so one of the ways that we think about technology's role in that downturn is the ability to take technology and put it on older pieces of equipment. So, for example, being able to retrofit the existing sprayer that you might have with this See and Spray technology as an example. That lowers sort of the barrier of cost to get into the technology. You get to do it with a piece of equipment you already have. And we call that precision upgrades, right? It's this ability to think about how can we add value to the equipment that's already sitting on the farm in the farmer's shed, as opposed to having to only bring it into the market from a new equipment perspective.
Interesting. And from an ROI perspective of what you're putting into the technology and the cost of that versus building a ginormous a combine or tractor, is that better for your profitability?
Yeah, we don't actually think about it separate technology from the equipment side of things. In our view, you got to have both. You have to have the world's best equipment. It doesn't do anybody any good if that tractor has all the technology on it but isn't doing the job in the field, right? So we think about it as a full system thing, and it's important for us from a profitability perspective to also be able to think about what does this mean on the farm. It's not. It's got to create value on the farm. If it doesn't create value on the farm, then that's not something. That's not a product, not a solution that we should be interested in.
Yeah, interesting. On the technology piece, I'm curious of the rate of change. Like talked to a farmer yesterday from up by Emerado, and he said, we used to chase markers, right? And we're doing, and now this technology exists. Well, from the standpoint of the very first GPS, era. To now seems pretty quick. I mean, and is that going to continue to shorten and the evolution of this technology changing season to season?
Yeah, I do think we've seen an increase in the velocity of technology uptake on the farm. I point to smartphones and John Deere Operations Center as an example of that, right? This is a digital application that is only 10 years old and gives you sort of a window into your farming operation in a digital sense, right? Didn't exist a decade ago. Today, it's on a lot of farms. Like the adoption rate has been pretty dramatic, and it's continuing to increase year over year, right? And part of that is just, I think, general society's acceptance of technology and the ability to understand where it can be useful and how it can be useful. And part of it is this technology is creating real value for folks on the farm. Like it's doing something, that's answering a question, it's helping them improve their productivity on the farm in a very real way.
Interesting. Anything else you want to tell us?
It's a great time to be in agriculture. It's a great time to think about technology in agriculture. I'm super excited for what the future holds.
Nice to see you. Glad you were here.
Glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.